warm welcome to Honorable Vice President of India, Shri M. Venkaiah Naidu Garu. We also welcome the distinguished guests to be on dais, Shri V. Muralidharan Garu, Honorable Minister of State for External Affairs. భారత ఉపరాష్ట్రపతి శ్రీ ముప్పవరపు వెంకయ్య నాయుడు గారికి సాదర స్వాగతం. Warm welcome to Shri V. Muralidharan Ji, Honorable Minister of State for External Affairs, Shri Niranjan Reddy, Honorable Minister of Agriculture, Marketing and Civil Supplies, Government of Telangana, Shri Gautam Reddy, Shri P. Harish, Shri Srini Raju, Professor Rajendra Srivastava, Dean ISB. Friends, can I request all of you to stand up for the national anthem? Thank you, Shravya. Shravya is our ISB student from the PGP class of 2020. Now I request Professor Rajendra Srivastava, Dean ISB, for the opening remarks.
Good morning. On behalf of ISB, I take this opportunity to welcome all of you to the second edition of the Deccan Dialogue, which is focused on economic diplomacy in the age of disruptions. We had initiated this dialogue with a strong partnership with the Ministry of External Affairs to promote multi-stakeholder conversations on economic diplomacy and India's external engagement by involving more players from down south. It is indeed our pleasure to have the Honorable Vice President of India, Shri Venkaiah Naidu, to inaugurate this important day-long session. His presence here means a lot, and I am sure the dialogue will go a long way in helping strengthen the local and the global connections. I also take this opportunity to welcome Honorable Minister of State Muralidharan and Harish P., Additional Secretary, Ministry of External Affairs. Thank you, sirs, for taking your time and initiating this important dialogue at the Indian School of Business. We look forward to your directions to make the best use of the dialogue. I also welcome honorable ministers from Telangana and Andhra Pradesh, Shri Niranjan Reddy and Shri Gautam Reddy, respectively, for their presence. I also welcome and acknowledge the presence of Shri Mahmood Ali, Home Minister, Government of Telangana. Also welcome Srini Raju, one of our very own Executive Board member for the Indian School of Business. Friends, just to briefly set the context for today's deliberations, I would like to point out that we are witnessing extraordinary times where geopolitical shifts, trade tensions, technology transformations, and climate change are all churning businesses and simultaneously impacting the economy, society, and the environment in very, very significant ways. The scope and scale of these disruptive forces are unparalleled in recent history. No country or organization is immune to these forces or can endure them single-handedly. Through the Deccan Dialogue, Ministry of External Affairs and ISB are working towards strengthening this important connect. It is important to come together to talk about and address and manage these tectonic shifts. This dialogue will cover 4 areas. First, technological disruptions such as automation, artificial intelligence, and genomics. These innovations are impacting processes, labor requirements, indeed how we live. There's talk about data being the new oil. Indeed, I look at insights derived from data as being the new transmission oil, the new lubricant of business and diplomacy. In many cases, thanks to artificial intelligence and things like machine learning, machines are turning out to be the preferred alternative, narrowing the line between labor and capital. Thanks to computer technologies, machines are turning out to be the preferred alternative to workers, which is narrowing the competition between man and machine. So that was one. Second, rapidly changing world order with the rise of China and the shift from Asia-Pacific to Indo-Pacific are changing multilateral and bilateral relationships. We must understand better, we as a nation must understand better what we bring to the negotiating table and understand how economic and business realities impact diplomacy. The world is interested in the Indian market because of its size and growth potential. The battleground between US giants like Amazon and Walmart is in India. Uber, having retreated from China, is battling for market share against Ola. We must better negotiate technology transfer agreements because we are the largest opportunity for many of the global players. We must properly handle the ease of doing business frontier and perhaps bring more manufacturing, more jobs, and more opportunity to the nation. Third, changing cultural milieus are of growing importance of nation brands, and soft power of education and cultural influences is growing day by day. We must open up India to education to our neighbors. We must also look at how we can lead and influence world thinking. And it is wonderful that Bollywood and yoga are both great global ambassadors for India. Finally, structural shifts in financial markets caused by digital transformation, growing nationalism, and economic strength is emerging. And we call them emerging markets, but frankly, China and India are no longer emerging. These are growth markets. These are big markets. So let's drop the word emerging markets. There's nothing emerging about us. While there's a talk of fintech, we must worry about TechFin. All right, you take the companies that are leading disruption in the financial sector. These are companies like Amazon and Alipay. And so we need to look at regulations, and we need to look at regulations globally. We must help our financial institutions, whether it is State Bank of India or the other domestic players in the financial markets, and we must help them compete globally. While countries used to compete over land and capital and markets, the fight is now over data. Companies such as Facebook, Google, Amazon, they generate advertising revenues out of India, yet taxes are paid elsewhere. We must look at the value that is being brought. It is intangible value. The average value of intangible assets in both the New York Stock Exchange and the Bombay Stock Exchange is about 70%. So 70% of the assets are not on the book. It's human capital, it's intellectual capital, it's insights, it's market access, and we must better understand what are the assets and competitive capabilities as we look at the future. The Deccan Dialogue will touch upon these aspects and initiate an engaging dialogue which, I am sure, will help the nation's policies and the broader objectives for development. Once again, I welcome all of you and look forward to great value additions and takeaways. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. Address by Shri V. Muralidharan, Honorable Minister of State for External Affairs, Government of India.
Honorable Vice President of India, respected Sri Venkaiah Naidu ji, Sri Niranjan Reddy ji, Sri Gautam Reddy ji, Sri Muhammad Ali, Sri Srini Raju, Sri Rajendra Srivastav, other dignitaries on the dais, on and off the dais, delegates who have come to attend this prestigious event of Deccan Dialogue. Namaskaram to all of you and good morning. At the outset, I wish to congratulate ISB for successfully bringing back the Deccan Dialogue to Hyderabad and making it an annual feature. The theme of this year's dialogue is Economic Diplomacy in the Age of Disruptions. Friends, it's a very relevant contemporary topic that is being discussed. the contours of the discussion has been already laid out in the welcome speech, and the Honorable Vice President is going to speak, which will be which will throw light on the various aspects of this topic. So I don't want to elaborate much on that, but still, there are some points which I would like to make on this occasion. Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji has always emphasized on greater involvement of states and union territories in India's external economic engagement. Multi-layered diversity of India demands region-specific external outreach for more efficiency and targeted benefits. As implementing authorities for a vast number of issues, state governments have a lot to bring to the table of international diplomacy and help make it work to solve local problems. With this vision, the Ministry of External Affairs has created the Economic Diplomacy and States Division and has facilitated the states' engagement with the outside world. Through the network of our missions and posts abroad, and branch secretariats and regional passport offices domestically, the division is helping in building institutional linkages and promote closer collaboration. Another aspect of the division's role is facilitating interactions of state governments with the resident diplomatic community in India to help bring in targeted investment, promote tourism and trade. In line with the Prime Minister's vision, my ministry is closely working with the state governments. The ministry has ensured that all our Indian Foreign Service officers are fully sensitized to the requirement of specific states of their choice. Also, newly appointed heads of missions abroad regularly visit state capitals and meet government authorities and business leaders to build effective linkages between their country of accreditation and our states. It's only logical that MEA's larger strategic vision of geopolitical engagement also find its reflection in the way our states interact with the world. MEA has also encouraged special focus on specific regions of India. For example, MEA has dovetailed Government of India's Act East policy with its specific focus on the northeastern states of the country. Similarly, the ministry has facilitated investment summits like Vibrant Gujarat with special focus on those states that are comparatively less connected, like Mizoram, Jharkhand, Himachal Pradesh, etc. Friends, coming to the latest developments regarding this aspect of today's discussion, after the new government under the Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji has taken oath, the new budget that was presented lays out the vision for the development of the country in the next 5 years. The vision for a 5 trillion economy to be achieved not just through governmental initiatives. There was a period when it was considered that the government will do everything. Now the dictum is the government has no business to be in business. That's the dictum of Narendra Modi ji's government. So, underlying this aspect, the $5 trillion economy that India plans to achieve or targets to achieve needs to be through the participation of the community, by the entrepreneur of India, whether they stay in India or abroad. So this is one aspect of the coming 5 years of India's development. During the last 5 years of Narendra Modi's government, we have climbed the scores of places and come up at the 77th position in the case of ease of doing business. And it has been facilitated through the implementation of many acts, like the introduction of GST, which makes our country as a one nation with one tax. Through review of the policy on various sectors leading to streamlining of the recent days, the policy on investment, which leads to further liberalization. Just this week, during the previous week, we had the cabinet decision on various sectors which allowed 100% FDI under automatic route for coal mining. We have the outsourcing, the liberalization of norms for FDI in single brand retail trading. And just yesterday, we saw the announcement of 10 banks being merged into 4 stronger banks. I read a news item which questions whether 10 weak banks can come together to create 4 strong banks. This is a question that I think is being raised by people who don't understand the real situation. The weaknesses of these banks, if they are the same, of course, this question has the relevance. But the weakness of one bank could be the strength of the other bank. The strength of one bank could be helping the other weak banks. So these issues, and when I look at that, I am reminded of one point which has been mentioned by the Honorable Speaker who did the welcome address. He mentioned about the Chinese influence that is coming up. Perhaps the Forbes list this year, the 500 powerful economic entities, in that you have the US firms with 121 presence and Chinese presence with 119. We are in a situation where for the first time the world economic order is changing. And in that, the presence of India, which is at the 15th position, and that presence of India, when we look at it, we see the State Bank of India in that. And State Bank of India's presence has been there because of the network that it commands, the national network that it commands. And in this connection, the merger of the 10 banks will go a long way in strengthening the Indian economy. From our part, the Ministry of External Affairs, ease of travel has been facilitated by the Ministry of External Affairs by granting e-visa for 54 countries, visa on arrival from 54 countries, and 17 countries provide e-visa for Indian nationals. Friends, digital economy goes a long way regarding the aspect that we discussed today. And that has been one of the achievements of the last 5 years of Narendra Modi government. Ladies and gentlemen, all around us, we are witnessing rapid changes in the way the world works. Though change happens all the time, its extent and pace now is like never before. And that's why the consequences would also be difficult to predict. The sources of these disruptions are of diverse nature, but largely we can see geopolitical and technological changes spearheading the transformation in the ways we produce, do business, interact as individuals and societies as well as countries. In this age of disruptions, multilateralism is coming under threat. When unilateralism and protectionism is coming to the fore, it's important to emphasize what Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi had said about reformed multilateralism. It's an idea that he first articulated at the BRICS summit last year in Johannesburg and also reiterated at the G20 summit in Osaka this year. He reminded that BRICS was founded to address the concern that multilateralism needed reform to benefit the developing world. So a decade later, faced with issues of unilateralism and protectionism, we cannot start reinforcing the status quo of multilateralism as its exit now. Instead, we need to bring about reformed multilateralism. This idea has also been recognized during the recent BRICS foreign ministers meeting in Brazil. In an era of turbulence, it's important to remain focused on the fact that change is inevitable, but we need to embrace change with an open mind. In fact, if we try to resist the change, it will only result in exacerbating the problem. Reformed multilateralism would be the best shock absorber in the age of disruptions. The new development bank is a concrete example of a reform initiative as a response to disruptions, where countries came together to address a felt need. Restructuring of international finance institutions and other multilateral institutions which are found failing in addressing the current problems should continue to be our concern. As international trade becomes a hotbed of old and new rivalries, we need to search for better ways to address its implications. India is committed to promoting a democratic and rules-based international order in which all nations thrive as equals. India firmly believes that economic engagement should lead to mutual development and not unsustainable debt burden and dependence or erosion of economic sovereignty. To be truly sustainable, regional economic initiatives must be based on universally recognized international norms, good governance, openness, financial viability, and transparency. With economic diplomacy for development as our main approach, our emphasis is on building partnerships that are mutually beneficial and in sync with national economic interests and priorities. Thus, our partnerships are consultative, non-reciprocal, and outcome-oriented. Friends, pace of change in technology is one of the major sources of disruptions that we experience today in businesses as well as our societies. Technology is constantly changing the way we do business and the way we live. We need better and more rapid mechanisms to cope and adapt to these changes. A lot of ways in which we produce, distribute, and consume goods and services today will be made irrelevant by Industry 4.0. Reskilling and upskilling will be necessary for almost all professions to be able to remain useful in the marketplace of the future. We also need to be prepared for the new places and methods of origin of businesses and make the fourth industrial revolution accessible, equitable, inclusive, and sustainable. As the single biggest technology revolution that has the potential to transform our work and life, artificial intelligence cannot skip our attention. With India's large pool of technically skilled manpower and the aggregate innovative power of our large young population, we are best poised to leverage this all-pervasive technology of the future. While India is doing great in artificial intelligence research and AI skills, and is also one of the leading countries in AI specialists and AI readiness index, we must renew our focus and expand our efforts in line with our national artificial intelligence policy. Multitudes of issues in the sectors of health, mobility, agriculture, energy, manufacturing and services, etc., stand to benefit from AI systems, and the benefit would not be limited to India, but would naturally expand to the entire developing world. Hence, our young entrepreneurs need all the encouragement from public as well as private sectors. Technology-driven startups have the opportunity to even out development disparities and aid in balanced regional development. In this context, the impact of our government's Startup India policy has been significant. In last 3 years since its inception, more than 15,000 startups have been recognized in about 500 districts of the country, covering all states and union territories. Today, most states have their own startup policy, and this sustained push by the government has also led to a multiplier effect on private sector funding of startups. We are committed to leveraging technological disruptions to make India a $5 trillion economy. Ladies and gentlemen, India has a lot to offer to the changing world. Apart from our material contribution to the world economy, our ancient wisdom of yoga, Ayurveda, and heritage, our heritage and culture has the power to make the hyper-connected world of today a better place to live. Just now I am coming from a South American tour where I had the opportunity to visit Buenos Aires, and I was told the International Day of Yoga had the largest participation outside India. Around 15,000 people participated in the International Day of Yoga in Buenos Aires. That is the power of yoga that is there. This soft power contribution by India is definitely valuable and essential for the well-being of not just the economy, but also of the people and the planet. Our government is committed to development, and we are taking all steps in that direction, whether in the international arena or within India. In this journey, the states and union territories of India are equal partners, and the guiding principle of cooperative federalism is certainly going to be a force multiplier. Hence, dialogues like this are more than necessary to move closer towards the goal of development for all. Distinguished participants, I am sure that throughout the day today, you are going to be part of deliberations on challenges and opportunities that the world is facing. I wish you all success in the process and look forward to your valuable suggestions and feedback. Namaskar, Vande Mataram.
Thank you, Minister. Friends, I request Honorable Vice President of India, Shri M. Venkaiah Naidu Garu, to address the audience.
केंद्र सरकार में विदेश सहाय मंत्री श्री मुरलीधरन जी, स्थानीय तेलंगाना सरकार में मंत्री श्री निरंजन रेड्डी जी, हमारा पड़ोसी आंध्र प्रदेश में मंत्री श्री एम गौतम रेड्डी जी, और केंद्र सरकार में विदेश मंत्रालय का एडिशनल सेक्रेटरी हरीश जी, member of Indian School of Business Executive Board, Srin Raju ji, Dean, Indian School of Business, Acharya Rajendra Srivastava ji, Sri DNV Kumar Guru ji, और यहाँ इस आयोजन में भाग लेने के लिए आए हुए प्रोफेसर राजू गौड़ा, ऑनरेबल मेंबर ऑफ पार्लियामेंट, श्री जयदेव गल्ला, ऑनरेबल मेंबर ऑफ पार्लियामेंट, ऑनरेबल कॉन्सल जनरल and delegates who are all participating in this conference, brothers and sisters. It's really my great pleasure to be here today at the Indian School of Business, Hyderabad, to inaugurate the second edition of Deccan Dialogue. I wish to congratulate both the External Affairs Ministry as well as ISB for bringing together such a diverse and distinguished gathering on a common platform to deliberate on the important and topical challenges confronting all nations in the economic sphere. It is heartening to see the great interest and response this dialogue has generated. The idea itself is a novel idea because India is huge and we have diverse situations and also vast opportunities in different regions of the country. If the country has to progress, the states has to progress. You have to recognize the potential of each and every region and try to take advantage of it and explore the possibilities. And such dialogues are really very useful. I am really happy that the External Affairs Ministry has taken this initiative. This is really cooperative federalism. As the Prime Minister said that we have to work as Team India, states and center, they must work together exchange ideas, explore opportunities, and then work together. And also now we have opened up. The entire world is looking towards India. My dear friends, I can tell you, as a minister I used to go abroad, but now as a vice president, I am visiting on behalf of Government of India, different countries. So far, I visited around 22 countries. There is a newfound enthusiasm among the world community about India because of three reasons. One is the culture. Our culture, our civilization is a big attraction to the world community. They respect it because one of the oldest civilization, thriving civilization. The second one is peace. The non-violence approach of Mahatma Gandhi. This is liked by one and all because everybody is slowly realizing you cannot have progress without peace. Peace is prerequisite for progress. If you have tension, you cannot have attention to anyone. The third one is the reforms process. The entire world community is very much impressed, very much enthused by the reforms that are being taken up by the government at the national level and also various state governments. These reforms process. The Prime Minister gave a 3-line advice or mantra or whatever you call. He said reform, perform and transform. Transform the nation. Transformation of the lives of the people. That is the purpose. Transforming the country, transforming the world. So this is also being appreciated, and the economic progress we are making on account of reforms, there will be some ups and downs. There may be temporary setback, and there may be little pain. I always say temporary pain for long-term gain. The temporary pain is for long-term gain. India is poised to become the third largest economy in the world. This is not what we are saying. World Bank, World Economic Forum, International Monetary Fund, Asian Development Bank, Moody's ratings, not Modi's ratings, Moody's ratings. Everybody is indicating that if India moves with the same speed and velocity and take everyone along with them, and the reform process continues, it will become the third largest economy. That's why when I went around, I found everywhere newfound enthusiasm. In addition to this, as Dean was telling, there is so much attraction towards 3 C's of India. 3 C's. 1, culture. 2, cinema. 3, cuisine. These are very popular across the globe. I was there just 1 week back in Baltic countries, Lithuania, Latvia, and also Estonia. Small countries, 28 lakhs, 20 lakhs, 40 lakhs population. Beautiful countries. They are not only beautiful, but they are also dutiful. They are doing their duty well. So they will become mightyful, undoubtedly, because they are combining all these things together. There also, everywhere, people are talking about our culture. People are talking about our cinema. They were saying, sir, we want Bollywood to come and shoot in our countries. And some people were enthusiastically showing, in one of the countries, the head of the country was showing, sir, Sukumarudu cinema is produced here in our place. And Sukumarudu is a Telugu cinema. So that much importance they are giving. And the cuisine, our food, is popular everywhere. The heads of the states are talking about Indian food. It's a different matter. Some of our youth are taking to other food, changing food habits, going for packed food, pizza, burger and all, little number of food, which is not good for the health. They should understand that also. Because people talk of instant food. Instant food means constant disease. This has to be understood by one and all. Food cannot be instant at all. It has to be cooked properly. Our forefathers for thousands of years, they have experienced food according to region, according to season. What we call in our local parlance is rutu and batti. Food used to be prescribed. So we have wonderful food. We need not run after other food, junk food, and also these 2 things which are agitating. We have to take care of these 2 things. One is the society itself has to take. One is the sedentary lifestyle changes. That's why the Prime Minister yesterday gave a call, fitness. Fitness is the need of the hour. Second thing is about food habits also. This is also equal. You go through magazines, international magazines, particularly American magazines. The way these non-communicable diseases are spreading, one of the reasons is food habits. So we have to take care of it, though it's not directly connected, but it is connected with the health of the nation. If you are a healthy nation, then you will become a wealthy nation. If you are a wealthy nation, there is no guarantee that you will be a healthy nation. Even if you are wealthy, there is no guarantee that you can eat Pulareddy sweets or Hyderabad dum biryani. You can't enjoy it. You can't enjoy it. So you have to be healthy. Not only our country, but the world also. And India, particularly, 65% of the population of the country is below 35 and 32 years. We are a young nation. So we have to take care of these aspects also before we discuss other issues. And this location for this conference, Hyderabad, is the place of happening. I can tell you, with my experience of going around, one of the most prominent places of happening is Hyderabad. We are happy. It is a favorable destination. You have everything here. And also this region requires development. Not only this capital, but the region requires development. There is so much knowledge and also entrepreneurship available. And then besides this, Amaravati, you have Visakhapatnam, one of the most beautiful cities in the country, very best located. Then you have Kakinada, SEZ, you have Krishnapatnam Port, you have Amaravati, you have Tirupati, lot of other places which are all places of happening, and there are lot of entrepreneurs. You go through entire country, you find all the contractors, important people, they are all from this region. So that means that talent is there. So we should explore possibilities of developing these regions, and you have airports, you have ports, you have railways, you have highways, you have 1,000 kilometers of coast, and then you have so much human resource also, as you have cultural activity, and then you have agriculture, you have aquaculture, every culture is available here. So we have to explore all these possibilities and present them before the world community, so that people come and invest here. It is heartening to see that great interest and response to this dialogue has generated strengthening economic diplomacy as a means of driving growth within our own economy and promoting growth and development across the countries is a key pillar of India's foreign policy. And we have been making earnest efforts to strengthen it. We are living through an era of globalization. I always say now, you can't live in isolation and have consolation. I am isolated, I am insulated, so I have consolation, happy. You can't live in isolation. The world is opened up. You are living in an era of LPG, liberalization, privatization, globalization. If LPG is used, the other LPG, you can run motors. If you mishandle LPG, you know what will happen. I need not explain to you. So this opportunity has to be utilized. It is also true that the global village we have grown accustomed to this is rapidly changing in unprecedented ways. Things are changing faster. This swiftly changing global geopolitical and geo-economic landscape requires individual countries to come up with carefully strategized, dynamic, and calibrated responses. My dear sisters and brothers and youngsters, the older patterns of trade and commerce are in the process of an ongoing paradigm shift. The rules-based, anti-discriminatory, and the all-inclusive multilateral trading system centered around the United Nations, the WTO, and the international law is facing an uncertain future. Not a welcoming trend, but it's the reality. This situation benefits no country, but it is the developing countries which are feeling left out from the process of economic cooperation and have to suffer the maximum consequences from the fallout. In the face of ongoing transformations, it becomes all the more important that we support the efforts towards making global governance more representative by ensuring greater participation of emerging markets and developing countries in global decision making. Irrespective of its failings and drawbacks, we must acknowledge that the process of globalization opened up a world of possibilities. For a young, dynamic, and developing country like India, globalization puts the markets of the world within a reaching distance and combined with the process of economic liberalization undertaken by India, the job market that young Indians face today is fundamentally different from what it used to be a couple of decades ago. This became possible because we embraced the process of globalization and we have striven to make it work for us. Wherever I go, I used to tell the youngsters, five things I used to mention. One is remember mother forever. Second, remember your native place. Even if you want to go abroad after studies, go, learn, earn, and return to serve your motherland. And the third is mother tongue. Practice, promote, propagate mother tongue so that you will be able to articulate your views in a better manner. Then motherland, the country which has given you the beautiful birth, you should always strive, work hard for the unity, integrity, safety and security of your motherland. And fifth, the Guru, who has given you Gyan Dene Wale Guru, who has given you this knowledge, you should always remember the Guru. Even after Google, now you ask anything that kids, they just try to go through Google. Even to operate Google properly, even if there is something wrong, goes with the net, you need Guru. So Google can never replace Guru. Guru is paramount always. You have to remember all these five things. And you go. Now I am saying, I am just moderating what I am saying. You go, no problem. We have enough population. People can go abroad. Provide a human resource for the entire world. You have knowledge. You gain experience. You upgrade your skills. You go. I have been going around, as I told you. I see a lot of Indians everywhere, even small countries, Costa Rica. Even this Estonia, recently I have been there. There are around 2,000 people, Indians. And Estonia is the first country which is totally digital. Small country of 12 lakh population, 100% digital. Everything online. There is no need to stand in line. Go and meet people, greet people, shake hand, do something in between hand. There is no such necessity at all. So such a change is happening even in small countries. And then I find a lot of our boys and girls there. And we are spreading our knowledge across the globe. It's a good thing. There is no problem on that account. This globalization has provided one advantage to us. India is the world's 6th largest economy, contributing over 15% of the global economic growth, and is poised to contribute to the global economic strength for the next many decades. As we are aware, the 21st century is being hailed as the Asian century, and India has a key role to play in promoting peace, security, and development in Asia and beyond. We have a history. We should all remember about the past history of our civilization. We are not warmongers. We never went on war in any country. All Tam, Dick and Harry came and attacked us, ruled us, ruined us, looted us, cheated us also. Cheated some of our minds, that's the problem. Some of our minds have been cheated, that's why we think that they are great and we are inferior. We have to come out of that colonial mindset at the earliest. That's why there has to be basic change in our education system. Secondly, we were once upon a time, was called as Viswaguru, knowledge givers. Nalanda, Didan, Takshashila, Vikramasila, so many other institutions. Students used to come from abroad, from world over, and used to come and study here. This is not I am saying. Pahian, Huan Song, Chinese historians came long back and wrote about India also. And also people say that India, around 20 to 25% of the world GDP used to be from India. Trade, again it comes back to trade. Those days, our relationship with other countries, we used to do trade and all. We were strong, but we never attacked. The reason being, we believe in the principle and philosophy of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. The entire universe is one family. That is the concept of India. Sarve jana sukhino bhavantu. That everyone, you live happily and allow everyone to live happily. This is that's why we never attacked any country. In future also, we are not going to attack any country. But at the same time, if anybody interferes in our internal affairs, we will give them a fitting reply which they will not be able to forget in the rest of their life, of their history. This has to be understood by one and all, including the neighbor who is aiding, abetting, funding, training terrorism, which is bad for them and bad for the world community. We want to have friendly relations. Remember what Sri Atal Bihari Vajpayee, former Prime Minister, said. He said, you can change friends, you can't change a neighbor. We know about that reality. But at the same time, the neighbor also has to behave properly. We don't want to interfere in the internal affairs of any country. And we don't want any country to interfere in our internal affairs. That's our policy, broad policy. We want peaceful coexistence. We believe in share and care. Share and care is the core of Indian philosophy. Sharing and caring is the core of Indian philosophy. We should spread this. And we should give our knowledge to others also. The other day I was in Vietnam. Harishji was their ambassador. Our people, our Swaminathanji, Professor Swaminathan, he went there and then gave them the knowledge about growing paddy. It's a different matter. Now, their production of Vietnam is more than our production after running from India. Coffee also, same thing. And many more like that. So we always believe in giving knowledge to others. We also believe in taking knowledge also. We are open-minded that way. So we have to continue with that. India supports a rule-based multilateral order to tackle many common challenges such as climate change, technology divide, trade disputes, terrorism, connectivity, and maritime threats. Terror is the enemy of humanity. It has no religion. It has no region. It has to be curbed mercilessly. Because as I told you, peace is a prerequisite for progress. If you have tension, you cannot pay attention. So terror is the enemy. It is not confined to one place. Some people unnecessarily try to bring in religion. No religion supports terror. No religion supports terror. Some people are unnecessarily, intentionally, purposefully are bringing religion in between. This has to be understood by one and all. When we are faced with the issues of unilateralism and protectionism, we need to be conscious of the fact that it was India and other developing countries which had earlier made a clarion call to reform the multilateral system as it exists so that the developing countries have a greater voice in the global governance. Consequently, it is not our case to go back to the status quo on multilateralism. We are also asking for our claim to be a member of the United Nations Security Council. See what is happening. We are all talking of democracy. India accounts to 1/6 of the world population. And you are not there in the world body. 1/6 of population, world population, India. And India is not a member of the United Nations Security Council. That's why we have been saying you need to democratize United Nations Security Council. Democratize United Nations Security Council. And also conclude the discussion, convention on terrorism. What is terrorism? This definition is being discussed there for years together. They should come to early conclusion. What we need is reformed multilateralism to face the headwinds of protectionist tendencies. We need to bring about the much-needed reforms in international political, financial, and business institutions so that they are more representative of the ground realities and adapt to respond to new challenges. Enhanced regional connectivity, both physical and digital, can boost trade and play a pivotal role in bringing prosperity and development. However, for such initiative to be successful and sustainable, they should be transparent, inclusive, and respect the principles of sovereignty and territorial integrity. This is an underlying principle. India, on its part, is placing special focus on improving connectivity infrastructure with the neighboring countries both at the bilateral level and through regional forums like BIMSTEC and Indian Ocean region. For expanding intra-regional trade, India's vision of Indo-Pacific is also rooted in advocacy of Sagar, security and growth for all in the region. India will support all efforts to keep oceans open, secure and free for the benefit of all. During my official visit to Africa, Asia and Latin America, I have personally witnessed the tremendous potential for stronger economic and investment ties with countries of the South. There are many complementarities which can be harnessed for mutual benefit. Effective economic diplomacy with a development approach is key to materialize this potential. India has always emphasized that economic engagement should not push countries into debt traps or restrict the space for their development. Development partnership should be based on sustainable models, on terms that are reasonable and appropriate and are guided by local priorities and capacities. The support offered by India under Developmental Partnership Program to countries in Africa and Latin America is also increasingly covering all critical areas of education, energy and skill development and disruptive technologies, including artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, issues of cyber security, etc. Thus, we have brought an IT-enabled services program, telemedicine and tele-education and Pan-Africa e-network project. These are the areas which have been overlooked by traditional development partners of Africa, but now focused on working on improving these very critical dimensions of our developed partnership. My dear sisters and brothers and youngsters, technology played a key role in shaping the current economic trade system. The rapid global economic integration witnessed in the last 2-3 decades was essentially fueled by IT revolution. New digital technologies like artificial intelligence and Internet of Things can provide much needed stimulus for reviving global economic activity. At the same time, we must be aware that they may exacerbate the technology digital divide and lead to compartmentalization of global trade due to legitimate concerns related to security and control over these technologies also. Technology is moving forward. We must also be ready to have it. I remember as a student, those days, because of the one ideology or the conviction at that time, policy, we used to, when computers were introduced in banks, we opposed it. And started taking positions. And the slogan I remember, automation, anti-nation. Automation is anti-nation. Can you think about it? Automation is anti-nation. The way change is coming. The transformation is taking place. You must be ready. You must update your knowledge. You must learn from others' experience. And you must share your experience with others. That is the need of the hour. That's how the world should prosper together. By mutually exchanging ideas, cooperating with each other without exploitation. India believes in embracing new technologies is a necessity for developing countries to leapfrog into fourth industrial revolution era and also to positively transform the lives of the people. Ultimately, what is transformation? What is science? What is technology? To my understanding, the purpose of all this is to make the people's life more comfortable, more happy. Not only prosperous, happy also. Mere prosperity will not bring happiness. There is a new concept now people are realizing, the need for happiness. You may have so many things, car, this, that and all, still you may be lacking happiness. So this a particular area also has to be focused attention. And what are the irritants? In the way of happiness, they have to be removed. And I was there in Costa Rica, a small country. In Costa Rica, there is no military. It's a peaceful country. And the Costa Rican president has issued a presidential decree about yoga. Yoga, knowing yoga, practicing yoga. And to my happiness, I found in Guatemala, in Peru, in Panama, number of places there are yoga centers. Yoga. India is a huge country. We should promote, practice more. Yoga is nothing to do with religion. It's an ancient Indian art. It's art and science together. Yoga is an art and science. And yoga ultimately, nobody should have any of these things. Some people are cynical, some people have negative mind, some people say this is introduced by Modi. Yoga is for your body, not for Modi. You have to understand that. Modi is the Prime Minister. So he has taken initiative. Swachha Bharat, per drop, per crop, reduce, reuse, recycle, water, or tree plantation, or discarding plastic. These are all movements that are necessary to strengthen our nation, make us a healthy nation. Fitness yesterday, the other advice he has given. We as a society must make them as people's movement. Civic sense, as I was mentioning about those three small countries, the amount of civic sense I saw there, the neatness, the cleanliness, really very, very impressive. Very impressive. So we as a country, developing country, growing faster, we need to focus on these basic aspects also. That's why the Prime Minister or the Chief Ministers from time to time, they also stress on this. Because over the years, what has become one weakness in our system is that in India, we started thinking that everything will be done by government. To some extent, politicians are responsible for that. Of course, I was also in politics till the other day. Now I am retired from politics, but not tired from public life. That's why I am here before you. Everything will be done by government. सब काम सरकार करेगा, हम बेकार बैठे तो चलेगा. ऐसा नहीं चलेगा. ऐसा नहीं चलेगा. ऐसा नहीं चलेगा. We have to work together. This is a collective responsibility of each and every one of us. That has to be understood. The governments has to look at appropriate frameworks for international cooperation at the global and regional levels that can avoid digital divide and ensure the fourth industrial revolution is an inclusive one. In this context, it would be pertinent to reiterate that India stands for open, secure, stable, accessible and non-discriminatory environment for the ICT and digital technologies and upholds the centrality of the United Nations in discussions on ICT-related security issues. We are very clear on that. India welcomes the establishment of a UN open-ended working group on this matter, as well as the launch of a new edition of the Group of Governmental Experts, GGE. Technology partnership should also promote innovation and indigenization so that the benefits are sustainable. That is directly related to capacity building and appropriate skilling, human resources, cooperation in higher education, and technical training become crucial in this context. I am glad to note that you will be deliberating on both these topics during the course of today's dialogue. I am happy that the ministers from both the states are here. I am sure that we would have noted the relevance of holding this dialogue in the city of Hyderabad. It has been the center of disruptions. Disruptions means technological disruptions, not the disruptions of assemblies and parliaments. Fortunately, they are also coming down. It is driving the innovations in the country and striving to fulfill the varied promise of digital age. T-Hub, one of its kind, the largest incubator for startups, is headquartered in the city and has been pivotal in providing our companies with innovation-driven ecosystems. Hyderabad is one of the first cities in India to witness the growth of the IT-enabled service sector and contributes more than 11% of the country's IT exports. Additionally, Hyderabad is also witnessing a rapid growth in the pharma, biotechnology, and medical technology sectors, with the Genome Valley near Hyderabad as one of the Asia's premium biotechnology and research and developing hubs. Today, Hyderabad has emerged as the choice of destination for life sciences. Companies of all sizes are its talent pool, vibrant life sciences and technology ecosystems, presence of premier research institutes, availability of ready-to-occupy laboratory space, and proactive government support. All of them are available for this city. And as I told you about the other region also, you have 1,000 kilometers of coast in Andhra Pradesh. You have 1,000 plus national highway. You have 1,000 plus railway track continuously. You have airports in all places, Visakhapatnam, Rajahmundry, Vijayawada, Tirupati, Kadapa. And now some more connections are being laid. And you have entrepreneur people who will be seen, identified everywhere in India. If they are doing something, means they must be from these regions, one of these two regions. Both the regions were together till the other day. So that is the advantage. To conclude, I would like to say that despite the challenging times, I remain optimistic that we can collectively overcome the new and emerging barriers to global trade and economic engagement and work out innovative and sustainable solutions that are acceptable to all. I hope your deliberations today will contribute to this exercise. We are here to exchange ideas, to know best practices, learn from each other's experience. That is the purpose of this dialogue. Know what are the opportunities that are available and take advantage of the same. I wish you all success to this dialogue. Also, I wish that you get an opportunity to explore the Deccan part of the Deccan dialogue after the dialogue itself and explore many treats that the city of Hyderabad has to offer. You can enjoy Hyderabad, first enjoy the dialogue, then enjoy Hyderabad. Thank you very much. Namaskar. Jai Hind.
Thank you, Honorable Vice President of India. Now, I request Srini Raju, Member, Executive Board, ISB, and Professor Rajendra Srivastava, Dean, ISB, to present a memento to Honorable Vice President as a token of our gratitude. Request Sri DNV Kumaraguru, Director External Relations, to propose the word of thanks.
Morning, sir. One of the things that we learn when the Honorable Vice President of India speaks is this ability to mix words. So, and the way he sort of rhymes them and conveys a very, very important message that otherwise seems very overwhelming. So, on that note, I want to start my word of thanks and thank you very much, sir, for taking time out of your busy schedule to come and bless us here at the Indian School of Business, inaugurating the Deccan Dialogue. Just for the benefit of the audience here, this is the second visit of the Honorable Vice President in his current role. He's been to Mohali earlier, to Hyderabad here in his current capacity, but also has been earlier to our campus as the minister. So you're a big friend of and supporter of the school, and we remain grateful to you for everything that you continue to say and bless us in that sense. Thank you very much. Before I thank the others, I do want to sort of make a mention of the fact that since the Honorable Vice President mentioned Prime Minister Vajpayee, this school was dedicated by Prime Minister Vajpayee to the nation on December 2nd, 2001. The reason I sort of thought it's pertinent to mention this particular thing is when the Prime Minister inaugurated the school in this very sort of auditorium, he used the words Rashtra Dakshina. Just like the Honorable Vice President, Prime Minister Vajpayee had this very nice flow, way with words. So he said, this is a gift to the nation. It's a gift to the nation from leaders of industry who set it up, leaders in academia from around the world, a lot of them of Indian origin, who came together and said, as the Honorable Vice President said, earn, learn, but return. So they said this is our way of returning and sort of helping set up ISB. There's also many others, Government of India, Government of then Andhra Pradesh, but now the Government of Telangana. We continue to be benefited. And I thought, why am I saying this? Because a platform like this, Deccan Dialogue, is something that we have created in partnership with the Ministry of External Affairs to create dialogues that are of importance for the country, but move them from beyond Delhi. And we've had a great partnership with the ministry. I'm grateful to a lot of people, but this is not the time to thank all of them. That's in the evening. But primarily, first of all, again, sir, thank you, sir, for being here and sort of for your wonderful sort of narration of your experiences and sort of, thought-provoking. I was just noting down so many things as you were speaking. And I know that many people I could see were also tweeting about it as well. And it's something that we all sort of really enjoy. I want to thank the Honorable Minister of State for External Affairs, Shri V. Muralidharan. It's no easy job to be a minister, take a flight from South America and do a stopover in Dubai. He landed in Hyderabad airport literally 1 hour ago and has come here, speaks of the commitment and the partnership that the ministry has. We remain again grateful to you and your ministry, sir, for your support. I want to thank Shri Niranjan Reddy Garu, the Honorable Minister from the Government of Telangana. Telangana government has been a very, very strong supporter. I don't think I can add adjectives to the partnership and the support that we receive from the Government of Telangana. As the representative of the Government of Telangana, sir, on this stage, thank you very much. And we look forward to your presentation in a short while. Shri Gautam Reddy Garu, the Minister of Industries from the Government of Andhra Pradesh. Again, like the Honorable Vice President said, this was all one region. You're our neighbor now. We can't change our neighbors, and we're glad you are our neighbor. So thank you very much. And we look forward to your presentation as well in just a few minutes. Shri P. Harish, who is the Additional Secretary, Minister of External Affairs, the Economic Diplomacy and States Division, for their support and partnership. They are our principal sponsors within the ministry for everything that we are doing here. Thank you very much. Our board member, Srini Raju, for his support, and the Dean for his guidance, which is what motivates a lot of us here to take up some of these interesting challenges. I do want to recognize and thank our excellencies here in the audience, some of our former diplomats, friends, government officials from Telangana and other state governments. All of you here, media, I know a number of armed forces officers from CDM, CAW are here as well. A large number of audience is online watching these proceedings. When you sort of turn around and you see this is on a Saturday morning, you have the hall full. In fact, people are sitting on the stairs. This speaks of the interest that people have in this. And thank you very much. Jai Hind.